All right, welcome. Say, today I'm going to share with you a little DIY hack that I put together for keeping my cloner temperatures down. Now, when I say that, I've done DWC cloning and I've done aeroponics cloning. Most recently, over the past year, I've been doing the aeroponics. I like that better, but that's just my preference. But in any case, as you run the pumps, like for an aeroponics cloner, you're pumping your water up and out through the nozzle, spraying it out through the nozzle. Well, that pump increases the water temperatures. And the same holds true for a DWC cloner. Your air pump is supplying that air. Well, that's warm air coming from the pump. It can raise your nutrient solution or your cloning solution in your cloner up a few degrees higher than where you want it. Okay. Now, with aeroponics cloners, you can time it. You can put a timer on it and say 15 minutes on, 15 minutes off. That's one way of doing it. But for me, that still wasn't enough. Now, this is particular. The smaller the cloner, the more crucial this is, because the temperatures raise a lot quicker in a cloner that doesn't hold that much fluid. Okay. Now, in our case, I'm using the Easy Clone aeroponics cloner, and it holds 2.5 gallons of liquid. Okay. So what I did was I started thinking, well, there's got to be an easier way of doing this, to keeping those cloning temperatures down. Because what I found is if your cloning temperatures get above 72, 73, 74 degrees, you start running into issues of developing some pathogens in the water. Okay, no matter how clean you try to keep it at those warmer temperatures, yeah, you'll root a little faster, but you also stand a chance of creating some pathogens. My opinion, or my preference, is I'd rather run cooler temperatures and take a little bit longer in the cloning process, and then I end up with some really healthy roots, okay, as opposed to some that are right on the borderline of pathogens or not. So that's my motivation behind this. Now, my other motivation for using this little unit here, okay, for the cooling, which I'll explain in a second, is I'm running out of room. I don't have room to put a chiller, a regular chiller in here. Now, a chiller has a compressor in it. And anything with a compressor, whether it be an air conditioning unit, a chiller, or a dehumidifier, when it kicks on, there's a power surge. So they recommend keeping those on their own separate circuit. I'm running out of circuits, and I'm running out of, room. So, hence this. And what this is using a Peltier, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, chip. And that's what this little white thing is, right in the middle here. I don't know if you can see it, that white layer. It's a 12-volt DC chip. You supply 12-volt power to it, and it gets cold on one side and hot on the other. And these fans expel the heat. Now, what they did was they took this unit here with the fans and here is basically a cooling unit for a central processing unit within your desktop computer. Okay, it would sit opposite way upside down. Okay, what they did was they sandwiched in the chip, and then they put a little heat exchanger on here, and it's all wired up, ready to go. And here's the inputs, outputs. You got a black wire and a red wire. You provide your 12 volts DC to that, and it starts cooling. Now, you don't want to hook it up without fluid going in there. You could screw up the chip. So what you do is you have this little 12 volt DC pump. It's about 63 gallons, I think, a minute, and an hour, 63 gallons an hour. And I labeled the end. I put some blue electrical tape on there so I wouldn't get confused with the other power supply, which I'm going to introduce you to. And here's this one is a 2 amp 12 volt DC. Now, we're not, for the pump, for that little pump, we're not using 2 amps, anywhere near that, but blue to blue, okay, so we don't get them mixed up. All right, so you pump it in, and then the output goes back in to your cloning reservoir, and it cools it down. Now, where we get the power for this unit comes off of this power supply here, and it converts 110 volts to 12 volt power, and it makes use of this little 5 millimeter connection. As you can see, I labeled it with red tape, okay? So we don't get them mixed up. And then I use little Wagos, okay? You've seen these before, I'm sure, okay? To connect it to the two wires up here, black to black, red to red, and then you plug it in and you're ready to go. Now, you got some small wires going to the fan and to the Peltier unit itself. I used some zip ties and tied them off here so we didn't have any tension on there, so they don't get pulled out. And I do the same thing when I hook up these Wagos. I get them hooked up in here, and then I plop them down and then wrap some tape around it, or a zip tie and some tape, okay, so to make sure we got good connections. Now, let me go over a few of these parts, and let me point out the parts list for this is available on my website, KootMed.com. It's in downloadable PDF format, okay, and it's a parts list for everything that I'm going to discuss here. Now, KootMed.com, and it's under the cloning section. So you can go there and get the part list if this is something that you feel like you need to do. It's not that complicated. This is pretty much put together for you. It's just a matter of wiring in a few things and drilling a few holes. Now, speaking of holes, let's go over this. I've got a rubber grommet on here, okay? But normally, this is a bulkhead fitting. Okay, it's a 5/16 inch ID bulkhead fitting, which is what these are, 5/16 ID. Okay, and that's what our blue hose, flexible hose over there is, 5/16 ID. Now, okay, this is a 3/8. This is a bulkhead, and I screwed on a rubber grommet. Now, this grommet is a 3/8 inch grommet. Okay, ID. So it's a tight fit. So I screw it on one end. So you see, we still got some threads, and what it is this bulkhead fitting doesn't come with the grommet, okay? It comes with these stainless steel washers. I've never tried sealing anything with a stainless steel washer, not when it comes to fluids. So I went ahead and modified it and used this grommet here, this 3/8 inch grommet. Now, this goes through the hole in the cloner, and I'll show you that in a second. And then this fits on here. You see one part is flat right there, okay? Just screws on and pinches it down and squeezes it all and makes a nice seal. This part here, the grommet, the center part, that's what's between the walls of your unit. And I'll show you that in a second. Okay, next we got some 90-degree 5/16 barbell bows. That's 5/16 ID. Some stainless steel washers, which are basically 9 millimeters to 16 millimeters washers. That's what these are, and they work. And then the other thing we got is this little kit, and it's really inexpensive. These are step bits, okay? And they help you drill in your holes in these plastic, and I really like them, okay? Now, the one I used is the larger one in the kit, and it has a number of steps. Let's see if we can get that in focus. But it steps in different increments, and you drill your hole down to whatever size you're drilling. Now, what I found for these grommets and for this bulkhead, okay, I found that 9/16 to a 5-inch, 9/16 of an inch, up to a maximum of 5/8 inch hole is perfect for these grommets here. Okay, a little snug, but they fit right in there, and they're going to seal it. It's not like we're dealing with pressure. We're just dealing with a little bit of liquid level that may be up in this area. We want to keep that from leaking out. Okay, so give me a second and to get set up, and I'll be right back, and we'll start putting this thing together for you. Okay, so stay tuned. All right, let's start off by getting our main power hooked up to our unit here. Now it's pretty simple. Make sure you don't have any fray wires here. So we got some twists. We're going to go black to black, red to red, and black to black. Okay, so slide it in our Wago there and pinch it down. Give it a little tug. Make sure it's not going to come out. Same with the other side. Okay. Now, let me show you a little trick that I do. I take some electrical tape and I put it around those levers there, which keeps them down so they don't accidentally get popped up. Okay? Now, also, we don't want to have any tugging directly on these. So what I do is you can put a zip tie here if you like, or we could do both of them at the same time, which is what I think I'm going to do. So let's go ahead and do our red wire now. Okay. That's down there. Get a little tape on there. Keep those levers down and locked in. Okay, we want to make sure, give it a little tug, make sure both connections are soft. Now we can take these two like this. Now what I like to do is, because we don't want any pulling, anything to pull these wires out of our Wagos, right? So if I take a little zip tie, this is a small one, a little 4-inch zip tie. Come on now. Okay. I'll just line these one on top of the other, make it a little neater. Okay. Pull it tight. And trim it off. Okay. Now, if this gets pulled, all the tension is going to be right here, not over here. Okay. And if you want, you can tape these together too, or zip tie them together too, but we're okay for there. All right. So that's it. So basically, we've got our barrel plug here, female barrel plug, marked in red with red tape, and we've got our main power supply, and they're just going to plug into each other, and that's how that's wired up. Okay, so stay tuned. We're going to do the scary part now, and that's drilling. All right, guys, you can see I've already got this my bulkhead fittings inserted and screwed down. I've got my little 90 degrees. This is the return line, and it's just hitting just above the water line, so that it provides a little bit of oxygen, and I can see if it's working. Okay, that the pump's working. The pump just hooks on using this flexible tubing. It just kind of sits there in the bottom. Okay, now on the tubing side, I want to talk to you first. This is a tubing that I use. Okay, now I had to order this. It took about a month to get it, but it's really flexible. Let me get my hands around here. It's really flexible. Okay, and if you look, the diameter is the same. This is what I started off with. Okay, the inside diameter is the same, but the wall thickness on this one was just a little too thick, making it difficult. I wanted to move this cloner around or not, so I went with this link in the parts list for this particular hose. Now, I want to explain something to you. I put this thing together and had been using it for almost 2 months. Okay, so I know it works. I took it, when I got done, I thought, maybe I should make a video out of it. So I took it all apart. I didn't take this part apart here. Okay, but I want to show you a mistake I made when I installed these. I'm going to spin this around and we'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, on here in the back, okay, you see where I got them? If I was to do it over again, I'd put it closer to the corner. I don't know if you can see, I got a little dot there. Not on the curve, but as close as I could to the edge, and the same on the other side, over in here, where that dot is. I'd move those, because what happens, the way I have it now is, by the time I get these 90 degrees on, the manifold, which slides in here, is pushed this way, pushed towards the front. It's not centered. Oh, probably a half an inch or so, maybe a quarter inch. So it's not perfectly in the center, but it works, okay? But if I had to do it over again, that's what I would do, put it closer to these corners here, and that way it's out of the way of the manifold itself. Now, let's go over how to drill, when you drill your hole. Well, like I said, we're going between 9/16 and 5/8 hole. This is a piece of spare plastic I had, and I went ahead and drilled a hole. This is 5/8, okay? And I experimented around with it, and what happens is, and this is what I suggest you do before you go drilling holes in your cloner, because once you do, you're screwed if it's too big. This is 5/8, and it fits right in here like this, okay? And you can use a little screwdriver to tuck these corners in if need be. This should pop in pretty easy. There we go. Okay, so we got, you see how that's got a little lip on it? It's going to pinch it there. On the other side is our threads, which I have on the inside. And if you look at this, one side is flat, okay? The other side isn't. Take the flat side, you want it hitting your washer, and you're going to just screw it on there, okay? And snug it down, okay? You can probably hand tight, just a little over is fine. You don't want to pull this all the way through by putting too much tension on there. That should work just fine for those holes. Now, before you do it, one way that you can test it is you can take a little, this is just a little tub that some potato salad came in. Drill a hole in here, okay? Insert your bulkhead, screw it down, dry it all off, fill it with water above the level of the bulkhead. Fill it with water, dry it all off, set it on a paper towel. Come back a half hour or an hour, see if that paper towel is wet. If it's not, then you got the right size hole, and you can be confident when you go drilling your holes in your reservoir here. All right, so that's about it for this part. The only thing left to do is take my tubing, and on the back side, if you notice, I'm going to go ahead and install some 90s, and then I'm going to measure and get the length of hose I need where I'm going to situate this cloner. Okay, so stay tuned, and we'll get to that. All right, we got our tubing all hooked up. I got the cooling unit mounted up there in the right corner there with a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch rope ratchet and some twist ties, and it's exhausting or blowing out towards us, not against the wall. The next thing I want to go over with you is, first of all, we're going to zoom in there, come in there, and I want to show you how it's working. Okay, you see the outlet, see how it's angled a little bit, and I can see that it's working, number one, and it's adding a little bit of oxygen in the water as it hits it. Okay. Also, how are we going to control this? In other words, how are we going to maintain the temperature? Well, we do it with this unit up here. And this is a Inkbird ITC 608T temperature controller. And what it allows us to do is allows us to control the temperature within 1 degree variance in either direction. I like setting it at 70 degrees, and you can see that's the bottom number there I've got it set at. Okay, I found that works best for my cloning needs, right? But what it'll do is it'll kick on when it hits 71 degrees, and it'll kick off when it hits 69. So it allows us some pretty close tolerances there for it, and it just does a great job. I really like these units. Let me pause this. We'll get set back up, and we'll do some final thoughts on this little project. Some final thoughts on this little hack. It's doing a great job. We're only working with 2.5 gallons in this reservoir here, and this is the 128 watt version. So it'll do about 7.9 gallons or 30 liters. They do have another upgrade unit to 180 watts, and that'll do 40 liters or about 10.5 gallons. And in theory, if you upgrade the power supply, and there's a link in the parts list for that, you can hook up to 3 of these with that particular power supply in series. In other words, you take the output of one, put it in another, the output of that into another, and then back into your reservoir. So technically, you could be cooling like 30 gallons, 31.5 gallons of liquid with 3 of these and 1 upgraded power supply. Okay, so that's a nice feature. All right, one last thing I want to point out to you. Now, on this ITC controller, I've taken the output of the controller, which you can see plugged in there, and it's tied into supplying power to this power strip up here. And you see 2 things plugged into it. One of them is a power supply for our pump, that's the bottom one. And the next plug up is the main power supply for our cooling unit. So when the ITC says turn on, it supplies power to this entire power strip, and we control both those power supplies. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. Say, you see that little white spigot down below? That's my little bonus hack. And what that is normally these smaller cloners don't come with any drain on them. So what I did was, this is a drain for a beer, brewing or wine making outfit. And what it is, it's just right here. There's two of them come in a pack. And it's a little bulkhead fitting. You drill a 7/8 inch hole in your reservoir. Okay, it comes with two silicone seals, one for the inside and one for the outside, so we don't have to mess around with a grommet or anything. And it works great. It doesn't have a large flow, but what I do is I put a bucket under it, turn it on, and I let it drain. And while it's draining, I go off and make my fresh nutrient solution. And that's about it. So as usual, stay tuned, and we'll keep you posted.